We're creating volume, we're creating layers, we're creating all the movement in the world for this week's cutting tutorial. This is going to be great for those creating movement behind the chair while tackling those hard questions that clients like to throw our way. So I won't have to blow dry my hair,
What's the easiest way to style this?
How do I blow dry these layers?
can't just get up
What
and go?
product should I be using? What they said. Let's go. All right, so to get started, I've just separated her right along her ear, the front from the back, because we're just gonna hop directly right into creating these layers. So these are gonna be more of a medium to shorter layer. So you're gonna see a lot of movement and a lot of texture everywhere. And we're gonna be blending in the front and the sides with a nice side swoop bang, because I feel like bangs are making a comeback. So to start off your sectioning in your back, we're gonna come right in the middle area of the head, and we're gonna take our first little section. So all this hair is gonna get combed forward, out of the way, and you're gonna repeat the same on the other side. And the reason for doing that is it just keeps it nice and clean to grab this middle section here to start your layer. So obviously you would wanna talk with your client about where they prefer their shortest layer to be and whatnot. But like I said, this is gonna be short enough where we see some bend through the top, and they're gonna get a lot of movement all throughout here. So we're just gonna come straight out. I'm using the fine side of my comb. If you guys have been following me, you know that I like that. We're gonna pull for both tension. So I'm flipping my comb to the bottom now, and we're coming straight out. I'm letting just a little bit of that hair fall, and we're cutting our first section. Now I'm flipping my comb to the other side, coming out, and to start creating my shorter layer, we're gonna start twisting and cutting up from where your point is here. We're gonna go up and twist at the same time as we move up the head. And then just bring it up when you get to your very top section. And I see my guide here, and we're just gonna cut this to blend. So we've created our first layered section here. Our shortest piece is right in here. So you're gonna have a nice amount of bend, and now we're just gonna blend everything in and match up. So we're gonna come in and take our next section. Keep all that hair pushed forward. You could opt to clip this if you wanted to. That's all personal preference. And I'm gonna be rounding with the head. I'm not gonna come back to center. I'm gonna be rounding with the head to create nice even layers everywhere. Let that hair fall, cut, bring it and twist. Make sure you can see your guide popping through. I see my guide down here, but I can also tell the difference between my guide right here by the comb. Hopefully you can see that. So I'm curious, for those behind the chair, what are some of the cuts that you guys struggle with most? Probably the #1 complaint I get from people watching the videos who are wanting shorter layers for themselves from a stylist in salon is they feel like no one can create the layers that they're wanting. So I'm curious as a stylist, whether you're new to hair, been doing it for a long time, what are some of the cuts that you feel you struggle with the most behind the chair? I'd love to know, so leave a comment below so that way maybe I can try to help you guys out, or if you have any further questions. And again, we're continuing to round with the head. So I've come to this back corner. So a lot of times, depending on the hair type, if somebody has finer, thinner hair, when I get to this corner side section, so right behind the ear, I sometimes do tend to pull it back towards me. And the reason for that is it can get a little, this is like the danger zone is what I like to call it. So pulling back just slightly helps keep a little bit more weight there. And you can always go back in once you've got it styled to cut into it more if need be. But I like to pull back just a little bit to give myself an insurance policy. I'll try to visually explain. If you're coming straight out here, and let's say they're really thin right along their ear, and you come in and you cut right at it, you don't let it fall out, that's when you get those little holes, possibly. So that's why I like to just slightly bring it back towards me. We're not coming straight out with it. I'm just lightly positioning back towards me. And you'll just continue to cut the same with your guide. And then remember, as we're moving up, we're twisting our hands to start creating those shorter pieces up through the top. We've got all that nice movement going. So we're gonna come in here and take our next section to do this next side layers, and we're just gonna do the same thing as we did before. We're gonna come just a little bit out from the center of where that original guide was taken. So using the fine side of our comb to get nice tension, we're gonna let those little bottom pieces fall out so we're not disrupting our perimeter, and I can see my guide clearly and cut. And then as we come up more into this middle region, we're pulling out and we're twisting, and I can easily see my guide, and we're gonna keep twisting slightly as we move up to the top section. And I am tending to point cut just to keep it nice and soft. We're gonna grab our next piece. And again, I'm rounding with the head. So when you have a client in your chair that's looking for either a new cut, let's say they want this cut, this is a lot of layers, a lot of movement. You definitely need to be finding out what their styling routine is, because finding out what a client's day-to-day routine is or their wash cycle is pretty key to knowing what kind of haircut is gonna work best for them, and styling tips that you can give them as well to help them create this beautiful style that you're creating on their own at home with their blow dry. Because so many times clients sit in my chair and they're like, Summer, I can never get it to look as good as you do. Which part of that is my job. I'm a hairstylist. I should be able to style your hair, quote unquote, better than the client actually can themselves. But there's no reason that you shouldn't be giving them tips on how to style their hair on their own at home, especially with a cut with a lot of layers and movement like this. Depending on the hair texture, if their hair texture is super, super straight like myself, if I don't blow dry my hair and really like try to amp up my layers, I just look like flat and lifeless hair. If I had more of a wavy texture like this mannequin is, you can play off of it a lot more without needing the heat styling. So a lot of times the tips you're gonna give them also come down to what their natural texture is. So now that we have cut the back layers, what I'm gonna do is I like to just go through and take kind of larger sections, not as precise as before. So I'm just kind of coming right in the middle area, and I'm just gonna bring it straight out and kind of see what it's looking like. And I usually just point cut into it to soften it up, kind of as like a precursor to any possible dry cutting. And I'm just gonna do that all the way around the head, focusing more on the middle. So like in here, I wanna cut just in this little bit here. I feel like it wasn't lining up perfectly. And then what we can do for our final checking on the top section is just go straight across the head, section to section, and work your way down basically to the occipital bone. Past that, the hair is not gonna come all the way up to the top of the head. So we're just gonna come straight up. I'm a little longer on this left side, so I'm gonna cut into that to make it match. Next section, I'm just using my fingers. And this will probably be our last piece that'll come all the way up. particularly on this left side. Yep. So now that we have created our back layers all through the head, we're just gonna move directly into our sides. And remember, we're gonna be creating a side swept bang, but first we wanna create a little bit more layers. So I will cut her side layers similar to how I did these back corner sections. I'm gonna go back away from the face just to make sure I don't take too much length at first. So we're gonna be going back away from the face, like I said. So we're gonna take our first section here, using the fine side of that comb. And instead of coming straight out, we're going back away. We're doing that to ensure just a little bit more weight in here. When you go to face frame, you'll remove a little bit more. So this kind of just helps break it up. So we're going straight back and we're twisting. I see my guide here and cut. Come up, twist. I see my guide, cut. And then these are my shark fin shears. I've mentioned them in other videos. I have the swivel thumb and I have a matching thinning shear, but I will link them below if you guys care to check them out. And I have a promo code that you guys can use for some extra goodies. So coming straight back, twisting. You really can see your guide well when you're taking the smaller sections. See it popping through, cut. Cut. So I'm gonna leave this last little bit here and wait to remove this until I get into my side swept bang, because a lot of this is gonna get cut out anyway, so no need to worry about it. And we are gonna come to the other side, comb straight down, take our first section, coming back away from the face, twisting. I see the beginnings of my guide here, cut. Okay, and now the fun begins with creating the side swept bang. So we've got a side part over here for our side swept bang. And to take the guide for our bangs, we're gonna do it in a similar way you would, kind of creating a little mini triangle, so to speak. So I'm gonna comb down the hair, see how thick it's falling towards her face in here to sort of create my guide. Obviously, we're gonna have less of a triangle on this side because it is a side part. So I'm using the edge of the eyebrow here as my guide. And I'm just gonna clip this out of the way. And then we're gonna come in on this other side here. And I'm gonna look and see, combing the hair forward. I'm gonna pull it and kind of start pushing. And it's actually separating basically right at the edge of that eyebrow. The edge of the eyebrow is sort of just your standard rule of thumb for creating the bang. Again, I'm taking the sectioning too, because when I take this piece and I go up, it splits. I'm gonna take just a tiny bit more to base it at the edge of that eyebrow. So use that as your general rule of thumb. You're gonna determine your length obviously with where your client is comfortable with it, but I'm gonna make it a pretty good side swept bang. I want a good swoop here going, so when they go to blow dry, you're gonna get a nice bend, and it's gonna really open up the rest of her face, followed with some nice face framing. So we're gonna start with our first little corner of it. Clip this out of the way. So what I'm gonna do is it's gonna start off shorter here and it's gonna angle down. Same for both sides. You're obviously gonna have more severity here on where the client parts their hair. So we're coming in, I'm just lightly combing, not pulling a lot of tension, and I'm gonna twist this hair. And I always like to start off though a little bit longer, just because you can always go shorter. So we're coming right in, right at the nose, and I'm just gonna point cut into that. I'm not pulling down, I'm just letting it fall. There's a little bend here in the hair, and we're cutting. I'm gonna pull that down, check it. It's lining up well, maybe a tiny bit more right here. And that has set our guide to create the bang for the rest of the side of the face. So we're gonna let out our next pieces along the face. I like to work in small sections. It just makes it a little easier. So we've got our next section and we're gonna be creating an angle here so that way it flows down through the rest of her hair and creates a face frame as we move down with the bangs. So I'm pulling the hair straight down. I'm not pulling really tight. I'm angling my fingers down. I see my guide up here and I'm just coming straight into it, slightly point cutting. Just hit that little corner a little bit more. We're gonna take our next section. We're gonna comb down and continue to angle our hands. Twist those fingers. You start at the lowest point of where your fingers are pointing down. I see my guide here. Our scissors are at an angle as well, and cut up into that. And now we're gonna create a little bit more on this other side. Usually the side that the bang is not swooping to is like a breeze to blend in compared to the other. Our fingers are at an angle, so now we're pointing up to the ceiling. My shears are going up, starting at the longer point, and cut. Matching up nicely. So now we're just gonna continue to take more hair from each side as we go to come down through the rest of the face to blend this in. So to create our face frame here on this other side, we're gonna just grab the hair. I've got my fingers twisted up. I see my guide here. I'm gonna come in with my shears and I'm gonna just go straight down while sliding my thumb in and out. And that removes all that weight here. We're here on this other heavy side. I see my guide up here. I'm gonna come in with my scissors and I'm just sliding straight down. We're gonna let out the rest of the sides now and blend in what's left out. We're letting down our sides. We're gonna comb it in, find where I left off, twist. I see my guide just right in here, and instead of sliding down, I'm actually gonna come up from the lower part with my scissors. I see this previous hair, twisting my scissors, cut up into that. I'm gonna repeat the same on this other side. Okay, so now that we've created the basis of our face frame, to sort of blend it in, I'm just gonna come in, take a little bit at a time. I'm coming straight forward, twisting, and I'm just nipping off any little hair. And this will help take out a little bit of the weight and soften it up by creating its own little layer. But I don't do this past where the ear is. Come forward, twist, cut. And we're gonna do the same on the other side. So to check your face framing, what you would do, you would stand in front of the client and just bring everything forward and cut into where you need to. If they're not matching up, I feel like she's a little heavier down on this side. Just gonna comb that forward, and it's right in this middle area. And then final way that I like to cut my side face framing, I like to come up and all the way over and nip out anything that might still be poking out. I think I do this for every single face frame, whether it's even on myself or clients or my mannequins. So one of the questions that's gonna be most important with any haircut, not even just this one, but in general, with your clients when styling on their own at home is letting them know what products they need to use. So if somebody has fine, lifeless, flat hair like myself, they need to be using a root lifter and a mousse and some sort of either heat protectant if it's not in one of those two things, or they can do, I love IGK's Bouncy Blowout Cream. That's a great shaping lotion, as well as giving some body and hold. And then obviously if you have a client with a lot of frizz, they need smoothing, serums, oils to get the frizz down, and if they have a wave with it. So now that the basis of the cut is done, I'm gonna get it styled. And for this mannequin, I'm just gonna actually use that IGK Bouncy Blowout Cream, as well as just a little bit of an oil because she's got a little bit of a wave. And I'm just gonna give a lot of bend and movement with my blow dry, and then we'll get to dry cutting. All right, so we've got her blown out and styled now, and now comes the refining and dry cutting. Usually with a side swept bang, they get a little heavy because it's so much hair going over to one side. So I will come in, you can either opt to do your regular shears and point cut, but because this is quite heavy, I'm gonna come in with my thinning shears. These are again the same pair of the shark shears. They're the Professional Pro. So I'm just gonna come in, I'm gonna point cut into it to soften that up some, so it gets a little bit more of a swoop effect going. I'm gonna come down and I'm just lightly gonna texturize this corner piece. A lot of times the very front corners will be like a little thick or blunty feeling, so I like to just soften them up, and it makes it a little bit more wispy. Oh, that's looking very nice with just a swoop. So I'm gonna just lightly texturize the rest of her bangs, nothing crazy. And I typically only will do it on the one side, but sometimes you may need it on the other. It just depends on how thick or fine their hair is. Usually always the swoop side you have to come in and soften up. Yeah, she's actually blending in quite well. This side looks just a little thick right in here. I'm just gonna run my hands through, see how it's feeling. I feel like maybe she needs a little bit more cutting in her layers right in here, a little bit of a layer compared to this other side, maybe a tiny bit here. But what I'll do to do that is similar to the layers we were creating earlier. We're gonna come out and I'm just gonna bring it in towards me, towards the face, and I'm just gonna cut into it. It's not necessarily that I wanna remove as much length right now, but just soften it up, maybe a little bit on the ends if you feel like it looks too feathery. And take this last little bit, really come down at an angle right in here. We're just cutting into it. Nice volume everywhere. And then we'll double check this side just to be sure. So coming from the back side of the ear, come forward a little bit. It's not as bad over here. That little guy right there sticking out. And then you would want to obviously look at the back, make sure that it's lining up nice. But I think all of that is flowing really well. Lots of movement and texture for sure. But yeah, came out good. A lot more movement than when we started. And then you would want to just finalize with your client whether or not they want hairspray. She definitely needs a hairspray here for the side swept. Typically with clients, when they do get bangs for the first time, I tell them that their bangs have to sort of be retrained. They might be in shock mode. So sometimes having to place a pin at it to get it to stay parted to the side if they're new to a side part or if they're flipping their part. But I always tell them they might be in shock for like the first 1 or 2 washes. And that you often have to retrain them, but this came out good. So I'm just gonna do a little bit of hairspray and we'll get finished up. Here we have our finished look, lots of movement everywhere, creating some texture, and with those shorter layers, we were able to create a lot more volume in the hair. The side swept bang is always a nice addition to any haircut, and we have a nice flow going through the rest of the layers along her face. Remember, finding out what your client's styling routine is can be so helpful when giving input on cut ideas or tips you can give them for at-home styling, and I've got some great blow dry tutorials as well that you can refer to them that I will link below. I would love to hear in the comments what's your favorite thing about doing hair, and be sure to share and subscribe and click the notification bell so you are reminded every time I upload. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you next time.